The Maelstrom Hunter by Crimson QB Sage, Chapter 25, Mount Glen, Beacon Academy landing docks. James Ironwood looked out from the landing docks of the city of Vale at night. A few airships hovering over the lit up buildings. Sleeping, Glinda called out, walking up from behind Ironwood. Arm was acting up, Ironwood stated, gripping his left arm with his right hand. Of course, so logically you got out of bed, dressed yourself completely, and decided to gaze menacingly out into the distance, Glinda stated, sarcasm present into her voice. What's wrong? I've trusted him for years. We both have. I can't help but feel like he's keeping us in the dark. Ironwood replied. Don't be ridiculous. You know very well that we are not the ones in the dark, Glinda said, causing Ironwood to laugh humorously. That makes it worse. I refuse to believe that a man that I've trusted for so long would act so passively, Ironwood said. You're a good person, James. You've always done what you think is best for people, even against strong protest. It's admirable, Glenn stated, putting a reassuring hand on her friend's shoulder. But it's high time you stopped talking about trust and started showing it. Husband has experienced that the rest of us lack, and I think that's something worth remembering. Amagakure Elemental Nations. And will I get out of this? Kabuto asked. The snake-like man had forgone his dark red cloak, opting to wear the standard Akatsuki cloak instead as he walked through the damp streets of the hidden village. Well, what exactly do you want? Madara questioned. I want Sasuke Uchiha. My master may not have been able to learn the secret to creating Sharingan, but that just means that I will finish it in the place of him, Kabuto replied. If that is all, you have yourself a deal, Madara said. How long would it take? Well, it certainly will take some time. Your request isn't exactly the easiest to fulfill, Kabuto stated. I didn't ask how difficult the request is. I asked how long it will take, Madara stated. Without the bodies, I'd say 2, maybe 3 weeks, Kabuto said. 2 to 3 weeks? Madara questioned. Raising an army of the shinobi you requested isn't something that happens overnight, Kabuto stated. Very well, I shall give you 2 weeks. No more, no less, Madara stated before disappearing in a spiraling vortex. White Fang headquarters. Madara reappeared in the same fashion as he left inside of the prison he kept Naruto. Soon enough, the QB shall be in my grasp, Madara muttered. A few seconds later, the second of high heels clicking alerted Madara to the arrival of another person. What is this? What is it that you want, Sender? Madara asked. You promised me that you would let him fix the seal on her before you extracted the QB, Sender stated. Yes, I did, didn't I? Madara questioned. Well, no matter. After we extract the beast, that we can have him fix the seal on your subordinate. You're lying to me. When Jinchuriki has to be to extract it, they die, Sender exclaimed. You will not be able to handle the truth, Madara stated. Stop lying to me. I want to know if the boy will fix the seal on Emerald, Cinder said. You want the truth? Fine. I lied. I never intended to let the Cubic Jerky fix the seal on your subordinate, but your corruptions were necessary for my plans, Mother said bluntly, walking to the shocked center. You are still a valuable asset, but you are still non-essential replaceable. You are still nonetheless replaceable. I do hope you understand that. With the threats still lingering, Mother walked out of the doorway. If he were to turn around, he would have seen Cinder's narrowed eyes. That's it, Cinder murmured to herself, directing her rage at Mother. Mount Glen. Hours later, Yang had taken up watch about an hour ago, allowing Ruby and Swai to sleep on the sleeping bag Yang had been lying on. Swai suddenly woke and stood up, causing Ruby to wake up as well. Swai, it's late. Go back to bed, Ruby muttered before Swai ran off. Swai, she said, wandering out of the building in search for Swai. Unbeknownst to Ruby as well as the rest of the group, a pair of yellow-orange eyes watched the young red-haired girl follow her dog. Swai, where are you? Swai, Ruby said, spotting Swai urinating on some ruins. Swai, it is a wasteland. You literally could have done that anywhere. Bark. Swai exclaimed. What was that? A new voice called out. Having heard the new unfamiliar voice, Ruby hid behind some ruins. I thought I heard a beowulf or something, another voice said. Ruby peeked her head around the ruins to find that the voice belonged to 2 White Fang guards. She was so focused on the 2 guards that she didn't notice the 3rd guard sneak up behind her until it was too late. Hey, what are you doing out here? The 3rd guard questioned, grabbing Ruby and hauling her out in the open. Where did she come from? The 1st guard asked. Hey, hands off! Ruby exclaimed. This boss is gonna want. The boss is gonna see. The boss is gonna want to see this. What the 2nd guard stated before they could process anything any further. A black rigid arrow was lodged in his neck, sending him crumbling to the ground dead. The remaining guards quickly forgot about Ruby in favor of getting into defensive stances. Who's out there? The 1st guard called out. Show yourself! The only response he got was the fireball being sent his way, burning the man to a crisp and a painful death. That's it, I'm out of here, the third guard yelled, dropping his gun and running in the opposite direction of the attacks. After running a few yards, an ice shard shot into his back, expanding to a large ice crystal upon impact. The large ice crystal that came out of the guard had ruptured several vital organs, and the man was bleeding profusely, dying out in nearly a minute. Ruby stared in shock at the brutal deaths of the three white bag members. When the sound of heels clicked was when the sound of heels clicking was heard. Turning her head in the direction of the sound, Ruby's eyes went from shock to both shock and surprise. You, Ruby exclaimed. I need your help, Cinder said calmly, a hint of concern in her voice. Why should I? You're the one responsible for all this, Ruby exclaimed, reaching for Crescent Rose. I am but a pawn in an even larger chess game, Cinder stated. Please, this concerns your friend. At this, Ruby froze, though still kept her hand on Crescent Rose in caution. You mean Naruto? Ruby asked with narrow eyes. Weren't you the one who kidnapped him in the first place? I need his help. My daughter, she needs the help of a Fuinjutsu expert that is on the level of an Uzumaki. I was promised that he would fix my daughter's seal before his Biju was extracted. Cinder replied, her voice slightly pleading. I just wanted to save my daughter. I'll help you, but only to get Naruto back, Ruby replied after a few seconds. This way, Cinder motioned for Ruby to follow. Wait, what about the rest of my team? Ruby questioned. Don't worry, I know how to get their attention, Cinder stated, pulling out 3 vials of fire dust and forming a gargantuan fireball before firing it at a nearby abandoned building. Alright, but just in case, Swai, go get the others, Ruby said, Swai running off to find the rest of the group. With Yang, the blonde bombshell of Team Ruby was leaning against the wall, her eyes barely open as she nearly fell asleep. Boom! Was the resonating sound that made Yang fully awake. Guys, there was a big explosion, Yang exclaimed, awakening the rest of the group. What are you talking about, Yang? Weiss asked the young. Someone else is out there, Yang replied. The rest of the group arming themselves before heading out to find the source of the explosion. Bark, Swai called out, catching the group attention. Swai, what are you doing out here? Yang asked. Bark, bark, Swai exclaimed, running around in a circle and running off towards the source of the explosion, the group following the dog, with Ruby in center. Meanwhile, the odd duo hacked, slashed, burned, shot, and froze anything that came in their path, finally making their way to a familiar building. He's right in there. We just need to release the barrier, Cinder stated, rushing inside the building, Ruby following in shortly after. It looks like a chakra barrier thingy. I don't know how to break these things, Ruby exclaimed. I might not, you might not, but I do, Cinder said, forming a familiar T-shaped hand sign. Kangabenshin no Jutsu, she exclaimed, forming four cinders. You're from the elemental nations, Ruby exclaimed in shock. But how? Oh, please, did you really think that your little friends were the first ones to cross over beyond the Oki no Okunote? No, the two civilizations have crossed paths long before the official discovery, Cinder stated, placing her hands on the seal tag in front of her. Mom, a new voice exclaimed. Ruby and Cinder saw Mercury and Emerald running up to them. Hey, aren't you two part of the students from Haven? Ruby questioned. No, that was just a cover-up, Mercury replied. Mom, what's going on? Yes, Cinder, what is going on? Mother asked, appearing a few dozen yards away from the group. A few seconds later, Cinder pulled the seal tag off the wall, causing the ethereal chakra barrier to dissolve before Ruby rushed to the still unconscious Naruto. Mercury, Emerald, I need you to take the two and run. Run as far away from this place as you can, Cinder exclaimed. Mom, Emerald exclaimed. Hurry, Cinder exclaimed. The group did as told. Ruby picked up Naruto and following Mercury and Cinder watched the four leave before turning her attention back to Madara. You are a fool to try and defy me, Mother yelled. No, I am but a fool for not doing it sooner, Cinder exclaimed, forming several flaming orbs that resembled the small suns. Shakuton Kajosatsu, she yelled, firing off the fire orbs at Madara. The orbs of fire did nothing but phase right through the infamous Uchiha. Just as the last fire orb passed through Madara, Cinder appeared a foot away from him, forming a couple of hand signs. Shakuton Beruijin Chua Kai. Kahio, Cinder exclaimed, releasing a torrent of red flames point blank at Madara, whose Sharingan morphed into a strange pinball-like pattern. Kamui, Madara exclaimed, swirling vortex absorbing the majority of the red flames, though not enough to stop the attack from hitting him, causing a large explosion to envelop both of them. When the smoke cleared, both shinobi were in terrible condition. Cinder's dress had scorch marks, scratches, and a few bits and pieces torn, blood dripping from her right forearm as she panted heavily in exhaustion. Madara was not faring any better. In fact, he was by far more injured than Cinder. His entire right arm was missing. A strange white substance dripped out of the base of the arm. His Akatsuki cloak was missing his right sleeve, and most importantly, the upper part of his orange spiral mask was destroyed, revealing that the entire right half of his face was scarred. Shakuton Shokyuko Fodo no Jutsu, Cinder exclaimed, using up the majority of her remaining chakra to form several flaming orbs that combined to form a single massive one, which shot forward at Madara, incinerating everything in its path. After the technique dispersed, Madara was nowhere to be found. I did it, Cinder said before her eyes widened, mouth slightly agape as a plain katana was implanted through her heart. But how? Izanagi, Madara muttered, his left Sharingan eye closing after he finished speaking. Even as you defy me, you will still have your resourcefulness as part of the Edo Tensei army. Those were the last words that Cinder heard as the light began to leave her eyes, her last thoughts being on her two children as she slumped over dead, with Naruto, Ruby, Emerald, and Mercury. Ruby and Emerald followed Mercury, the former carrying her still unconscious boyfriend. There should be an exit this way, Mercury said whilst running a small silence permeating the group. So wait, if your mother was from the Elemental Nations, does it mean you guys are from there as well? Ruby asked after a few minutes. Yeah, Cinder took us in and brought us out here, away from the Elemental Nations, Mercury stated. Cinder, I think that's her name. She mentioned something about her daughter needing an Uzumaki Funjutsu master. What's that all about? Ruby asked. My sister here has a seal on her that needs fixing, Mercury replied. This way's the exit, he exclaimed, pushing a pair of large metal doors open. The sunlight beamed brightly at the sudden exchange of lighting. Damn it, why did it have to be this exit? Emerald yelled. What do you mean? Ruby questioned. This exit doesn't lead into the ruins, it leads into the wilderness, Mercury exclaimed. Which way did they go? The voice of a white vanguard called out. I think they went this way, another white vanguard exclaimed. I don't think we have much of a choice in the matter, Ruby said. Before the three could prepare to fight, the earth beneath them shook, causing them to pause. The earth shook once again, then a third time, then a fourth, and soon enough, their rumbling brought sight to a familiar-looking, rather large grim. Crap, Goliaths! The first white vanguard exclaimed. We gotta get out of here, the second white fang member yelled. What about the Jijiri and the three others? The third member asked. To hell with them, I'd rather live. Thank you very much, the first guard exclaimed. Goliaths! They'd never come this close to the base before, Emerald exclaimed. Before they could say anything else, the earth began shaking as 5 Goliaths came through the thicket of tropical trees and approaching the 4 huntsmen in training, who froze up rigid as the massive beast of Grim came closer and closer. Come, a booming, gruff voice called out, causing the 3 awake members of the group to look on in confusion before looking at the first Goliath closest to them. Come with us, safe elder. Meet, the first Goliath said. Ruby, Emerald, and Mercury's eyes widened in shock. They can talk, Mercury questioned him. Dr. Ublik did say that there were some Grim that got smarter over hundreds of years, Ruby stated. Hurry. Much. Discuss. Elder, the Goliath stated before marching off, motioning for the group to follow. I don't know about this, Mercury hesitated. If those Grim wanted to kill us, they would have done it by now, Emerald stated, walking off after the Goliaths. It's either them or the White Fang and Akatsuki, Ruby said, following Emerald. Mercury said nothing but following after his sister and Ruby, with the rest of Team Ruby, Team Archfiend, and Dr. Ublik. Oh no, Black said, the Swai having led the group to a large sinkhole. Do you think she fell? Weiss asked. Well, Ublik questioned him. Down there, Roshi stated. Oh my, Oblik said, looking down the hole to see if there is abandoned buildings and a scarred battlefield. Of course. What is it? Fu asked them. How could I be so stupid? Ublik muttered to himself. Dr. Ublik, what's wrong? Han asked. Mount Glen. Yes, an expansion of Vale that was inevitably destroyed by creatures of Grim. It previously home to thousands of people, working people commuting to the city, the main city, developed a subway system to the inner city. Grim attacks increased, population in danger, now desperately searching for shelter. City evacuates into the metro tunnels, and what do they find? The southeast quadrant of Vale is known for wild forest and deep caves. Oblik exclaimed. Doctor, what are you saying? Yang asked. My dear, we're not just looking for an underground crime network, we're looking for an underground crime network, Oblik stated. They've been working in caves, Blake questioned. No. Mount Glen was Vale's first serious attempt at expansion. It worked for a short period of time, thanks to an aggressive perimeter defense and unique transportation. The city developed an elaborate subway system to carry citizens safely from the new territory into the main kingdom. Sadly, without the main natural barriers, Vale had to to protect its borders. Mount Lane was doomed from the start. As the end drew near, the citizens of the territory made one last attempt at survival. They took up shelter beneath the city in massive caves that they had cleared out for the subways, and they had cut themselves off from the surface. Ubik exclaimed, an underground village, unquestioned, and Amanda speaking, yes, a safe haven, until an explosion opened the mouth of another cavern, filling with subterranean grim. After that, the kingdom officially sealed off the tunnels, creating the world's largest tomb. If Ruby and Naruto are down there, Rublik stated, pulling out his therm as it morphed into a club. We must find them. Omake, Dr. Ublik's odd weapon. 5 seconds later, Roshi spoke. So, your thermos is your weapon? Roshi questioned him. Yes, Ubik replied. And you use dust in your weapon? Roshi questioned. Yes, Ubik replied. So you've been drinking dust with your coffee this whole time? Roshi asked. Well, for the past 5 years, yes, Ubik stated. Why only the past 5 years? Weiss questioned. Well, before that, Ublik started 5 years ago. Run! Run for your lives! Another person exclaimed. He's coming this way! He's coming this way! Another person shouted. John Osborne just stood off to the side and watched the people flee in the direction he came from. Excuse me, but what are you running from? Osborne asked, grabbing around the person to answer the question. It's Ublik. He's found his stash of... A man started but saw something behind Osborne that made his eyes widen. Ah! He yelled before running off. His stash of what? Osborne called out. My stash of red grim. Whee! Ublik yelled, literally bouncing off the walls of adjacent buildings. I can see sideways in time. I'm emitting nigh Sibris eek. Are you okay? Osborne asked. Of course I'm okay. They thought they could hide my stash of energy drinks from me. Wah! I can taste colors, Ublik exclaimed, spinning in a circle as he spoke, his speeds matching that of trains. I don't think that energy drinks are the best thing for someone like you, Osborne stated, taking a sip of his coffee. Try coffee with some dust in it. Gives you the energy jump you need for most situations. Present day. And that's when I came up with the idea of making a thermos bat. Ublik finished, causing the others to switch up even why. But how did you get over your addiction to energy drinks? Han asked. Get over my what? Ublik questioned. I never did. It's just that there has never been another energy drink within a 50-meter radius of me since. The rest of the group stood silent at the answer. Okay, Roshi said. End of chapter 25.